This is Grant Manley playing in top 4 at a Pokemon Regional Championships with Charizard EX. And this is also Grant Manley talking to me about how to play Charizard. In this video, we'll be talking about how Charizard EX plays against every single matchup in the format. But to start, Grant will talk about his personal decklist choices, including potential inclusions and exclusions. This video is chapters, so you can skip to any part that you personally find most interesting. Alright, enjoy this Charizard EX guide. Alright, so Grant, the first thing I want to ask you about is your choices in the list. So you have some pretty interesting things. The first thing to catch my eye are the fire energies, to counter catcher, all of these things that you have in the list, justified gloves. What do you think about your list?
Yeah, I mean the list is mostly pretty standard, but yeah, we went a little bit greedy on the fire energy, so 7 fire, 1 rod, 1 seal stone is like the bare minimum for all of those. So it's definitely a little bit greedy, but that let us play a bunch of other cards like you said, the 2 counter catcher along with the 3 boss was like really good. You just gust all the time, and when you have Pidgeot on board, you can just boss on demand or counter catcher with like Arvin. So yeah, really good, really aggressive list, and I think I really enjoyed having like the 2 counter catcher in like games that I was behind, and then 3 boss lets you just boss every turn even when you're ahead, which just shuts people out of games, so it doesn't like really let them come back at all. Definitely felt demoralizing being on the other end, and like sometimes in the mirror matches, like wow, like they could just always put you out for boss and boss like 3 times in a row, and so it's very annoying for opponents to deal with that. They have to have a really good start in order to keep up. Yeah, the Rotom started to become standard, but a lot of the Japanese players started playing Rotom, and I was like, wow, I got clapped by it at LAIC, so I was like, wow, that seems pretty good. And so I'm like, yeah, this deck should probably, like Rotom seems like just the best candidate for 4 Seal Stone. So the deck's already using Arvin to like set up, so you have to use 4 Seal Stone. So then it comes down to like which Pokemon V is best, and it seems like Rotom probably is. You have the Lumineon too, but obviously you don't always want to put that down on turn 1. And then some of the lists were not playing Arvin, which like you
The
have
horror
the
list, yeah.
idea. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the idea is that you Rotom to like make up for that, and you have Mew, but like Arvin is just like way too good. It makes the deck so consistent, and maybe a little bit reliant on going second, I suppose. But yeah, so we wanted the Arvins, and we still wanted the 3 Iono. And the research, I got a lot of mileage out of the research. I feel like there's a lot of situations where the research is good. Obviously, you never need more than one, so you just play one. Sometimes you can quick search for it. Like, especially after your initial setup, a lot of times you've like exhausted all the cards in your hand, especially if you have to like play Ultra Ball. Sometimes you have to vacuum away a path, and then like all your cards are gone, so then you like research and fill up your hand again, which is cool. And then you still have the Ionos for later to disrupt. And then the last thing about the list that I guess is interesting is the Vitality Band plus Justified Gloves combo. And I originally wanted Defiance Band because it's 1 spot instead of 2. But Azul convinced me that Gloves plus Band was better because he said it covers every situation, and Defiance Band covers every situation, but only when you're behind. And I ended up running into a lot of situations where I was like tied on prizes where I needed like the Vitality Band or the gloves. So I was glad we went with that. That was a very strong combo. Gloves obviously pretty much only good in the mirror, but when the mirror is 20% of the field, that seems to be well worth it. And so you basically beat mirror if they don't have gloves, and then if they also have gloves, you at least just don't lose. It's just like a 50-50. Vitality Band super good against Giratina primarily, and then sometimes against Miraidon. And Mirror is also pretty good in Mirror because Vitality Band lets you KO Pidgeot when they're at 3, which is a big part of the Mirror match. And I guess the other thing was that we don't play Radiant Zard because it's very it takes up a lot of space. Like you need the Zard and you need a switch card for it. And then you probably also want like another fire or another rod. So we just went with like a very streamlined list that focuses on Charizard EX and pretty much never attacks with anything else. And then I guess the stadium lineup is just a 1-1-1. Basically, we wanted a lot of path counters. The 2 vacuums are pretty much a staple. And then all of the other stadiums. We had a nest ball over the Artisan, but then Grant Shin was like, well, Artisan just makes more sense because it also counters path. And we're like, yeah, that does make sense. So we don't play any nest ball. There are some situations where you want to like Arvin for like nest ball Forest Seal in like the middle of the game to like Forest Seal for something. Um, I had that come up like a couple times. I don't remember exactly like why, but
Like fire
yeah.
energy, I guess.
Yeah, maybe like a fire energy or like a Pokemon. I don't remember, but yeah. So for the most part, level ball is like better because it lets you get the Charmeleon very consistently, and the only thing it doesn't get is Rotom basically, which is fine. I also had one other situation where my hand was kind of bad, and I had a level ball, and I wish it was a nest ball, but I think level ball is better overall. Just very consistent, and then Lost Cities for like opposing like Lost Box decks. Like sometimes if they play one Sableye or if they lost on a Sableye, you can lost on their other Sableye, which is really good. Um, I had that come up when like Jirachi was prized, so maybe that's like too situational. I don't know. And then Lost Doing the Moon is like the big one against a lot of the decks that play one Moon. I didn't play against any like Lost Box decks, so I didn't use the Lost City that much. I don't think. I did play against some Tinas though. And then the collapse is obviously good because there are a lot of situations where you need to get rid of the Rotom or the Luminion. So I'd say yeah, mostly a standard list, but there are like a couple of small like tweaks. I think the list was very well rounded and pretty much optimized if there can be such a thing. So it felt very good. Yeah. Sorry, that was kind of a long rant about that.
No.
Um, I don't know. Is there anything I missed about the
The one
list?
thing I'd ask you is almost every list before this has run more than one Lost City, and you guys are only on one Lost City. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's like pretty much mostly good against Lost Box, and if you have multiple, it can be good against Gardevoir, I guess. You can pretty much see that we weren't really respecting Gardevoir a whole lot. We didn't play like the Avery, we didn't play an extra Lost City, or like any. We played one Ember Charmander, but that might be just like that should maybe just be another of the other one that can discard the stadium because I have won several games off the back of that Charmander discarding a stadium against Path, which is pretty funny because like the decks with Path generally don't match up well into Charizard if Charizard's able to set up. So you just put a bunch of Charmanders down, and then like one of them discards the stadium, and then another one evolves into Charmeleon, and you're like chilling. So I had that come up a few times. The Ember sometimes can be good against Gardevoir if like if they like have prepped one psychic energy and then they attach reversal and then load up 5 and so they have 100 damage. That was the idea with that, which definitely could happen. Sorry, that's kind of off topic, but it goes back to like the Lost City thing where it's yeah, chaining cities against Gardevoir is like sometimes okay, but I don't know, it didn't feel like we really needed more than one.
Cool. I mean, I think you covered everything that I had. I mean, the only thing is, do you think that the 7 Fire 1 Rod was too greedy, or would you play it again, or would you recommend most people play it as well? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would play it again. I think it was just right. It was definitely you definitely ran into a lot of situations where you had to be very careful with your energy, and it especially was pretty sketch when like some starts required you to like retreat into a Mew and then retreat out of the Mew, and that's like 2 energy gone. So then yeah, and then yeah, there were definitely some sketchy situations where I had to be very careful about my energy, and then sometimes like the rod would be like discarded or prized or something. Um, but I think it was just right. You have your Charizard. You only need maybe 3 attackers in a game at most. So like 2 on a Charizard, and then like 2 on another Charizard or a Pidgeot. And then you got the Super Rod too. So it should be fine. I think it's just fine. But you definitely have to be careful. There were a lot of like super like borderline. I might lose by running out of energy situations, but I don't think it ever quite got to that point.
And also, another thing I have is in this tournament, obviously, people don't know how much energy you're running. How often, or did it happen very much, where your last energy goes on board and you have nowhere to retreat, anything on bench?
I don't think I had that come up. I was
Mhm.
like very careful about it, so I would
Okay.
sometimes pretty much anytime I would use Charizard EX's ability, I would not load more energy than I needed to, just in case. But yeah, you could if you had to play around like Iono or something and just hope that they don't expect you to have like they don't go YOLO boss stall basically. You can maybe do that, but yeah, I was like overly careful about not letting that happen. So yeah, I don't think that came up for me, but it definitely could happen.
Cool. All right. Well, I think the next thing to talk about, we went over everything with the list. The next thing to talk about is, before we get into matchups, is how you feel about first or second into basically every matchup. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I choose to go second every time if I don't know what I'm up against. I think the only matchups you want to go first are Gardevoir and Chien because those decks always want to go first, and they can't really pressure you on turn one, so it's like fine to miss like an Arven VIP pass. Though typically you do want to go second because the deck relies very heavily on Arven, especially like there's 4 Arven, 4 Ultra Ball, Lumineon, Mew. You can get an Arven turn one pretty often. You really want an Arven for VIP pass. And if you just have a VIP pass naturally, that's great, but it's just a lot more outs to VIP pass on the turns you can use Arven. So very reliant on that Arven, I would say. So you definitely want to go second, but again, against Gardevoir, Chien, you probably can go first. I think another matchup you probably want to go first is against Iron Valiant, because there's a pretty good chance you just start Pidgey or Mew, or maybe even Charmander, and you just lose. So I would always like be a little worried about that. I actually would always, when I was going second, I would bench like both guys. Like if I had like a Charmander and a Pidgey, or even a Rotom, like a Charmander or a Rotom. And I actually did play against the Iron Valiant deck that I didn't know about beforehand. So I was glad that I did that. Um, but it is kind of annoying to have to do that. Usually you only want to put like one guy down in case you get roped or something. But I don't know. Yeah. So pretty much, yeah, I think first against Iron Valiant is good just so you don't get donked, uh, and then just try to set up. And once you get Charizard set up, you should be fine. And then another one might be Urshifu Inteleon. That one I'm not sure about. I've heard different things on whether you should go first or second in that matchup. And as far if I had to decide, I would probably go first, but second might be better. I'm not really sure about that one.
Okay.
But yeah, second against everything else, so like Mirror, Mew, Miraidon, just Tina, Lost Box, all that stuff, just auto second for sure.
DTMU the contact you turn one. What do you think? Still second?
Yeah, still second. I'd say Judge Path is basically just as good as Intact. Also, a lot of them have Luxray. It seems like not a lot of them have like been cutting the Luxray, but I think the Luxray is pretty good. So yeah, you might get Luxrayed. You'll probably definitely will get probably definitely you are very likely to get Judge Path. So I like having to go second, get my Arven, get Mew, a bunch of Charmanders on my bench, and then maybe like a Rotom. The Rotom ended up being pretty good because even if I could only bump Path, I could still like draw 3 cards, and I don't necessarily need the entire combo right away. So yeah, I definitely would go second against
Cool.
DTE Mew.
Cool. I mean, that's all I have for first or second. So let's get into the matchups. The first matchup I have is Charizard EX Mirror. Yeah, what do you think about Charizard EX Mirror, basically?
Yeah, the mirror's pretty interesting. It's a little bit more complicated than I was expecting, but it used to be a little bit different, but now with like counter catcher and like vitality band and justified gloves, mirror's like a little bit different than it used to be. The main thing is you don't really want to go to 3 prizes if you can avoid it, because then they can vitality band KO your Pidgey out. So that's a big thing to keep in mind. And then you also would like them to go to 3 prizes so that you could do that. You pretty much just always kill Pidgey out as soon as you're able to. The matchup's kind of like a flow chart. If you go first, take the first prize, and they have a Rotom, then you go take the first prize, they hit you, you take another 1 prizer, and then you KO Rotom, and then you win. You don't go for the Rotom right away because then you're at 3 and you might lose. If you get first attack and they don't have Rotom, then you go take 1 prize, then you can just hit a Charizard, or take another 1 prize, and then you just 2-shot their Charizard, and then 1-shot something else, and that's fine too.
So I just wanted to show you practically what Grant is saying here and how that looks like in an actual game. So this is top 4, and he literally does exactly what he just said in this game. So essentially in this situation, there's a Charizard active, Grant's at 5 prizes. He could kill the Charizard and go down to 3, but as he said, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to make sure that his Pidgeot can survive, and he kills the Charmander. Pretty cool play. Obviously confused the commentators at this point as well, which was pretty interesting. So I thought this helped and made this make more sense. Back to Grant ranting.
Pidgeot, you pretty much always kill a Pidgeot when you can, but you don't normally bother 2-shotting it with like 2 boss. That's just kind of like a waste. If you don't take the first prize, then you just hit their Charizard, and then on turn 2, and then they hit you, and then you hit them, and then they hit you, and then they're at 3, and then you kill their Pidgeot, and then you win. So that I think works out. And then if you have Rotom on your bench and they can skip from 4 to 2 by KOing your Rotom, then you need to collapse it away. Yeah, I'm still like trying to like figure all these lines out in my head. It's kind of like a lot of situations that come up, but pretty much all of them are like scripted out in terms of like how you play it. Obviously, it's a 50-50 at the end of the day. Unless they don't have Justified Gloves plus Vitality Band, those two cards are really good to mirror. So Justified Gloves basically just lets you KO Charizard at the end of the game when they're at 2, which is great because their Pidgeot is hopefully dead by then, so you kind of need that to win. And then, yeah, the Vitality Band, great for KOing Pidgeot when they're at 3. These things pretty much come up a lot. I guess you can KO Rotom when they're at 6 with Vitality Band. I never had that come up, but theoretically that could happen. But yeah, the main thing is like avoiding going to 3 as soon as you can, because they can't one shot a Charizard or a Pidgeot when you're at 4. So that's something to keep in mind. You can kind of get them to waste attack if you don't have like a Rotom or Luminar on your board. Collapse is pretty good. Collapse can also, I had this come up one time, Collapse can also prevent them from using Collapse. So I did win a game by doing that. Because I was able to go like one prize, KO Rotom, and KO 2 prize for game. But yeah, that's like the main thing. You'd need your Justified Gloves to not be prized. Sometimes you need 3 Charizards. I ended up needing 3 Charizards in my top 4 game, and I wasn't able to get the 3rd Charizard and lost because of that. That was very sad. That's kind of unusual though. You don't always need 3 Charizard because normally they're not KOing 2 Charizard until like the end, until like the game is ending. So yeah,
sure.
I don't know. I guess I wouldn't think about that one too hard. I don't know. That's pretty much it. I don't know. Did I miss anything about that?
I don't think so. What do you are you ever trying to not bench Rotom early? It's one thing I had.
Yeah, if I don't have to, I'm not going to.
Mhm.
But if my hands like if I don't have basically if I don't have turn 2 Pidgeot Charizard, then I'll just bench it and it's fine. If you're getting the first prize, it should be fine. Basically, it's not like a huge deal, but you rather not bet. It just gives them like an extra line to. It just gives them an extra line to play the game if you have Rotom on your bench. So yeah, you wouldn't play it down if you don't have to, but a lot of times you kind of do have to. So and it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. And one more thing I have. It's not entirely off topic, but it's slightly off topic. I had this come up a lot. Do you attach Sealstone on turn 1? What do you think? Attaching Sealstone to Rotom on turn 1.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where you just have to decide whether you want to play around Vacuum or
Yeah, exactly.
Iono. Generally, they want to Arven to set up, so I would be like pretty okay with keeping it in my hand. And then also, I generally keep it against decks that play Vacuum because, um, one, they kind of want Arven to set up in the mirror match specifically, but also you can always Arven for the Sealstone later because you play 4 Arven, so you're probably gonna run into one of those at some point. So I'm probably would lean towards keeping it in hand. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that's all I was asking for. All right. Next matchup, Gardevoir X. You say you haven't played this matchup a ton, but what do you think about the matchup as of right now?
Yeah, it's probably slightly unfavored, but I don't think it's that bad. You basically need to get a 2 prize lead. So if you're in a situation where, I mean, you ideally just go turn 2 attack, take 2 prizes before they can respond. And then you like go from there, and sometimes you have to KO their active. And sometimes KOing the EX is bait. It just kind of depends on the situation. Um, if you think I like sometimes Ionoing plus KOing their active is better, and hope they whiff a response KO. If you can only get 1 prize before they're like fully set up, if you think they'll be able to KO you after taking 1 prize, then there are some games where you actually just don't go ahead on prizes, so they can't use reversal or counter catcher, and you stay even. So like, yeah, you stay even on prizes, and then sometimes the case ends up where you can win the game by like you can force them like Zacian, and then you like KO Zacian, KO Guardi EX, or like KO Guardi EX. KOing Guardi EX when they have to play another Guardi EX down is generally pretty good. Um, but yeah, it just kind of depends. It's kind of a weird matchup. If they draw really well, you're probably going to lose. But There are sometimes situations like if your start's not that good and you don't think you'll be able to get a 2 prize head start, then you like don't proc the reversal. And then sometimes, and then they have Screamtail and Cresselia, so those don't always matter. They only like sometimes matter. If you're like a lot of this is like very reactive. So like if you think Cresselia would be like annoying or Screamtail would be annoying in like a particular situation, then you put down like the Manaphy or the Jirachi um to counter that preemptively. But yeah, you don't need those cards. They're not like a high priority like the Jirachi and the Manaphy. They're just kind of like there for situational uses. Yeah, I don't know. This one is just kind of varies a lot depending on like how things go.
Yeah, I've obviously I play this matchup a lot from the Guardy side, and before we were testing, especially for LAIC, we found it was really scary if you took 2 prizes and like went ahead, because a lot of the time and went ahead from like 4 to 5, because a lot of the time, if as long as they don't kill the Gardevoir EX, you have no real response to, especially at the time we were running Screamtail Cape, which I mean most people aren't anymore, but a lot of the time they just take the 1 prize, go, now you're 4 to 4, and you kind of just like sit there doing nothing for a turn, and they kill your EX, and it gets really annoying from there. So I think not going ahead is a really good point, but in those games where you're kind of like only 1 prize ahead. But yeah, I think that's all I have for the Gardevoir matchup. Giratina lost zone. What do you think about Giratina lost matchup?
Yeah, this matchup's kind of annoying, but it's not like that bad. I'd say it's like maybe slightly unfavorable. Same with like Guardy. The Our list played 5 stadium counters, which was like pretty insane into this matchup, and the Vitality Band. So I'd say we're probably like more. We weren't like specifically teching for it, but we're kind of like more teched out for this matchup. So we didn't have too much trouble with the Tinas that we played against. As far as what you do, generally you try and punch the first Tina. So like you go like 2-shot the first one, and then after that you don't really want to 2-shot another one. The ideal situation is you 2-shot the first one and then you KO one off the bench, like a Tina V off the bench. Sometimes you need Vitality Band for that, and then you 1-shot a V Star, but that doesn't always happen. So a lot of times you have to KO 2 1-prizers. The Vitality Band is like pretty much the god card in this matchup. It's like crazy how often you use that because a lot of times you do go ahead and you don't get the Defiance Band. So when they are at 3, you can use the Vitality Band to 1-shot a V Star, which is really good. The Jirachi is also like really important in this matchup because it just shuts off their options. So when they're about to get to like 10 in the loss zone and they might use Sableye, then you just put Jirachi down. Manaphy can be good too, but I didn't end up really using the Manaphy in this matchup. It didn't seem that important. They're rarely able to use Greninja before you like have evolved your Pokemon.
It's like turn 1 going
Um,
second, you're avoiding benching it, not really benching it, not avoiding it.
Yeah, unless they did like 3 Comfies and I didn't see a water energy in the loss zone, then maybe I'd bench it. Like if they went first and did like 3 Comfies, that doesn't seem to happen very often, but I guess it could, and then you'd be a little sketched out, and then you might want to play down the Manaphy. Um, but yeah, so that's just another like kind of an option that you have, but it doesn't come up that often. Yeah, you'd kind of just have to look at the situation and see, like, am I getting ninja here? Because you don't want to just like lose to a turn 2 ninja. That would be kind of annoying. Usually, what Tina wants to do is they want to 2-shot your first Zard and then boss your Pidgeot. Maybe they'll do that first. Doesn't really matter. And KO that, and then 1-shot your other Zard. So, one thing you could do is if they punch your first Zard for like 280, sometimes you can retreat it, and then it's safe on the bench with Jirachi, and then they'll have to like use a gust to KO it. I don't think I had that come up very often, but it could happen. Usually, you just want to get ahead and stay ahead, and then you can Pidgey out for like path counters. Another thing I really like to do is have the Forest Seal Stone unused on my bench because there's nothing they can really do about it. If they KO the Pidgeot, and I have the Forest Seal Stone, so they're always going to do that over KOing the Forest Seal Stone. So if they like Roxanne Path you, that's like your only reliable way out of Roxanne Path. Aside from, I guess you could already be fully set up with like 2 Zards or whatever, and like maybe like a Pidgeot attack sometimes. Pidgeot attack is sometimes good, but you don't really want it to just die immediately to a Tina. So that's like you don't normally attack with it, but you can sometimes. And it can actually follow up a 180 or like a 210 after a Zard to KO a Tina, which can be pretty good if you want to like hit a Tina, then KO it with Pidgeot, and then your other Charizard comes in and just goes like one hit KO, or something like that. Um, but yeah, if you get Rock Sand Path, then you can have the Seal Stone guy on your bench, and then you can always have an out to it pretty much, which is cool. Sometimes you have to use the Seal Stone to set up, obviously, because you kind of need a lot to set up. But yeah, that's generally how it goes. A lot of times you end up KOing like some one prizers, which is fine. Just two shot the first Tina, one shot a V star at some point, and then either two one prizers or boss KO a Tina V is like awesome. That's really good. And then sometimes they can, if they like cram you turn one, it's kind of annoying. But then you can potentially Vitality Band KO a Tina V faster. It just depends on what happens. But I'd say the matchup's like not really that bad. It's like pretty close. I think that's about it for that one.
Cool. All right. I don't have anything else to add to that. So Lost Zone Box. So the two versions are sort of the either the pile with Greninja, the Tord pile, or the Tropius pile are the two decks right now.
Yeah.
And then the Radzard TM Devo, or not Moon, whatever. What do you think?
Yeah, so I guess the Tropius super effective glasses thing, I don't think anyone's really playing that deck, but it does seem kind of scary. That does seem like the only Lost Box deck that can actually beat Charizard, because like what are you gonna do? Your only attackers are Charizard and Pidgeot. And Pidgeot gets super effective glasses, amp you very much, or just arm press, doesn't really matter. And then Charizard gets blown up by a super effective Tropius. I don't know. I haven't seen that deck aside from that one top four in Stuttgart, I think it was.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that is probably just a bad matchup. And then they also have the Moon to one shot your Charizard. Yeah, I don't know. That seems like kind of a tough matchup if they get set up. But the other Lost Zone decks are pretty easy, I think. The Tord pile. I mean, they have some of them have like Giratina now, so they can like go Moon Tina, I guess. But you just Lost Zone their Moon, and then their Tina only gets one attack. So they would have to get like an Iron Hands early or something to win, I think. And then Kyogre doesn't really. Kyogre and Manaphy and Jirachi stop Kyogre, Ninja, Sableye, all that. So they really just have to KO your big guys, which is really hard for them to do, especially because you're like spamming Iono and like Lost City and stuff. So it's pretty hard for them. And then Sablezard is probably the easiest one to beat because they just can't do anything to you. I mean, that matchup is they have TM Devo and they have two of them, I think, but it's just like it just doesn't matter. Like, what are they gonna do? They can't kill that many Charizards. So you just put Jirachi in on your bench, and yeah, you could just kind of cook them. One thing that can be kind of annoying, I guess this kind of goes for Tina as well, is if they go like Spiritomb turn one before you Rotom, but like that is like pretty situational. It doesn't like really matter that much. It just sometimes is like kind of annoying, but it's not like as big of a deal as you might think. So yeah, against Sablezard, you just kind of like play normally and like Iono them, and they can't really do anything. And unless you prize Jirachi, then you probably lose, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. Did I miss one? I think that's
Nah, I mean, that's all the
the main.
versions. I mean, there's a Sablezard Moon version, but it's like the same thing as any other pile because they're on
Yeah, the
TM Devo.
Sablezard Moon version might be a little bit closer because they can Moon your
They're
Charizard.
on
I
TM
haven't really.
Devo, so
Oh, okay, yeah, I haven't played against that one, so I'm not sure.
yeah, it's very niche. But yeah, I mean, the matchup seems pretty straightforward. Attack with your Charizard, right?
Yeah, pretty much just. I mean, this is like your only attacker, but yeah, they have a hard time dealing with
Yeah.
Charizard.
Cool. All right. Miraidon. Do you have anything? What do you have to say about Miraidon matchup?
Yeah, the Miraidon matchup's pretty good. I definitely prefer to play against the Peony version without Path, which before San Antonio Regionals I would have said is like the Path version is like the only one, but the ones that end up doing the best were the Peony version, which is pretty interesting. I played against one of those, and I didn't play against any Path version in the tournament, but I have played that matchup quite a bit. And I guess I'll start with the Path version. I mean, you play against Path by we have obviously the 5 counters to Path, which is awesome. Mew on the bench is pretty good because it lets you sort of recover off like a bad Judge or an Iono or something like that. But in general, like Charizard is pretty good. If they go early Iron Hands, then you do need an early Charizard to respond. But then they lose like all their energy, and it's like fine, and you just go Charizard, Charizard. I'd say Pidgeot is like the lowest priority in the Miraidon matchup, and that's not to say it's bad. I still sometimes get it out, like when it's convenient. But generally, like a couple Charizards is enough to just win. Um, but I'd say Pidgeot's like a really high priority in like all the other matchups, but not as much for Miraidon. And then if you're like don't have anything better to do and can't one shot their active, sometimes you just like boss a Mew or a Squawk for like an easy KO. That's pretty cool. I like it when they have those guys on the bench. So it gives me some. I don't like. Sometimes you just have to hit their active for like 180 or 210, which is kind of annoying, but whatever, it's fine. And then obviously once they start taking like a prize or two, then you one shot all their guys. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You just gotta save your path counters too,
Mhm.
and yeah, that's another one where you can stick the Forest Sealstone on the bench, and it'll probably stay there.
Mhm.
But you usually don't want the two prizers down if you can avoid it. But sometimes you need them set up, which is fine. Because if you set up, you just charge on them and you're good. The other version with the Peony and like the no path is pretty much a lot easier, but they can more consistently get the fast Iron Hands. But they can't really disrupt your hand, so as long as you have like a decent hand, you can build up a turn 2 Zard and just respond to it and then win. It's not too bad. Um,
I think the only thing
yeah,
I'd say from playing the Miraidon side is even if you get the Bravery Charm, if they can just hit you for 240 on like your Iron Hands, so you can vac it later, even if you whiff the vac, that's like
yeah,
pretty
that
good.
comes up a lot. Yeah, it's I don't like to rely on that because they can switch card and heal, but that is something that just happens to come up a lot. Yeah, you're right about that. The charms, yeah, sometimes you need to vacuum away the charms so you have less vacuums for path, but that's fine. It's generally better to get the charm if it is relevant for like the math. But yeah, you're absolutely right about that. That does come up a lot.
Yeah, and then like, yeah, I mean the main way I see, I played a decent amount of Miraidon in Peony version as well. I think like the only way that I can ever win this matchup is like going either Miraidon with Bravery Charm for 220 and then amp the Charizard is like the only thing they can ever do. So, but if you ever basically kill a two prizer on bench, then Miraidon can never win. Because it's a hot
Yeah,
hand.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Miraidon definitely can win, especially if Charizard doesn't like set up like turn two. It's definitely winnable. But definitely Charizard's favored against Miraidon.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
part of why we wanted to play Charizard. Is like we expected a lot of Miraidon. I only played against one, but um, it was pretty popular I think overall. So it's nice to have a good Miraidon matchup.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. I think we covered everything. So the next matchup, Mew V Max. Just talk about Mew V Max. Fusion
Yeah,
DT.
yeah. So the Fusion and the DTE version, I think the Fusion version is a little bit easier to beat. You play against these decks pretty similar to how you play against Path Miraidon, to be honest. Like the Mew on the bench is really good. The vacuums. Sometimes you need the vacuums for like just like sometimes you need them for Bravery Charm. Sometimes you need them for Box of Disaster. It's like one of the few ways they can actually win is by doing Box of Disaster things. Um, but yeah, I had a pretty crazy stream game against Mew DTE Hammers where I like was pretty much dead drawing off every judge, but I had a Rotom, which was nice because even if I just bumped path, I could Rotom for some cards, and then he would have to judge me again. And if he's judging me, he's not bossing me. And if he's not judging me, I get to keep my hand. So I was eventually able to set up. And once you get a Charizard set up, like you're good, especially against DTE Mew. Against the Hammer version, you don't really attach your energy. Normally, you would attach your energy because you want like maybe a Mew pivot or a Charmander attack to discard the stadium, or just to go like attach Candy Zard under path, and that's usually pretty good. Against the hammer version specifically, pretty much don't do that, so their hammers like clog up their hand and they can't do anything. And there's like a decent chance your energy will just get removed anyway, which would suck. So, but then when you go Candy Zard, you load 3 energy onto the Zard, and maybe even a fourth one if you have an attachment from hand. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, normally you like to prep the energy on the board against Mew. So there's a variety of uses for it. Um, and then yeah, you pretty much just want to set up. This is another matchup where Pidgeot isn't like the highest priority. I'd say Pidgeot is like lowest priority against like Miraidon. You still use it, of course, a lot of times, and then Mew, and then like high priority against like everything else. So you don't always need a Pidgeot, and the reason for that is if you get a Charizard set up, you probably win. If you get two Charizard set up, you definitely win. So that's like the plan. The Charmeleon helps with that too. Um, but yeah, pretty straightforward. You just need to watch out for like the box and the quad fusion energy play against the Meloetta version, and then maybe like the Excelgor version. I've never played against that deck. It seems like it's not that bad, but I don't know.
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Oh well, the matchups. I mean, the matchup might be okay, but that deck is terrible. It's the worst deck
That's what I've
I've ever
heard.
played.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from the people who play the deck. So, not too worried about that. But yeah, Mew's probably Charizard's best matchup. I think. Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah. So, love to play against Mew. Definitely had some sketchy situations where I've like almost lost to it. It's not an auto win, but it's probably your best matchup. You just need to set up Charizard and try and play around path and judge to the best of your ability.
Cool. No, nothing else for it. So
yeah.
Urshifu Inteleon. Yeah, many people say this is one of Charizard's worst matchups. What do you think?
Yeah, so Charizard has a lot of like slightly unfavorables, but the deck is so good that you can kind of maneuver around them most of the time. Urshifu Inteleon is not as bad, I want to say, as a lot of people think. Part of the reason for that is because Urshifu is just like not very consistent. Every time I play that deck, I like have a miserable time. We actually had Urshifu Inteleon locked in midnight before the tournament at San Antonio Regionals, and we just decided to switch because the deck's just not very good. But it definitely has a lot of great matchups on paper, and that's why it seems like such a good play. As far as the Charizard matchup, yeah, it's definitely not super fun. It's very grindy, and they have a lot of like options. Especially if they like get set up quickly, it's like pretty tough. Manaphy and Jirachi go a long way because they really want to be pinging your Pidgeot and like your Charmeleon and your Charmanders and your Charizards. So they want to be pinging your threats, because if they spend too much time and resources on the Manaphy and the Jirachi, then you're just killing them. So and they want to set up the devolution play, obviously. So those cards are really good. The Jirachi stops Yogloop onto the bench, which could be really good early, and the Manaphy stops Rapid Flow from just beating you. So those cards are really nice. I'd say Manaphy is probably more important, but Jirachi is pretty good too, because without the Jirachi, they can set up like a Yoga Loop on the Manaphy and then Rapid Flow you, which is not fun. So yeah, as far as what you're supposed to do against them, I still go for Pidgeot, even though it will inevitably get devolved at some point. That's fine. It just helps you set up and helps you stabilize and pull off boss plays and stuff. You generally go for the 3-3 line, so your first attack ideally is on something that is either a VMAX or something that is likely to evolve into a VMAX. You probably will end up like wasting at least one attack in this matchup. Hopefully it's just that and just wasting one attack for like pretty much no value. That's fine. You're just pressuring them. You're just hitting with Charizard. You're going to try and go after the VMAXs. 2-shot of VMAX, 2-shot of VMAX. That's it. Going after anything else is pretty much always bait. I've found, even though it's like really tempting to KO the Octillery, maybe if you know their hand, like maybe if you just know they really need the Octillery, but I haven't had that. Pretty much in testing, and in the tournament game, I've found that Charizard wins by just going 3-3 KO VMAX KO VMAX, and that's fine. And then you do definitely make use of the Charmeleon, because if you manage to evolve up a Charizard from the Charmeleon, you don't get hurt as bad by the Devo, or at least you force them to have a lot more damage on that Charmander. So on that Charizard. So yeah, so that's pretty good. You generally go like Candy Zard, Candy Pidgeot, build up another Zard, and save your other two candies to respond to a Devo play. And then you have to like kind of stagger your other basics. You just need to make sure you don't you do need some experience in this matchup. You need to be very aware of like what that deck is capable of doing, because you do have some options to like play around what they can do. So like yeah, they can. It kind of depends on their board. If it's like two double gunners, maybe an Alakazam, maybe their bench is full, maybe they can Devo. But they can't do everything. They can't do everything every turn because the deck doesn't have a very good engine, and it can't. It's just it's kind of like clunky, and it's just kind of playing with what it's got. So yeah, I know I'm kind of rambling here. I think the matchup isn't that bad. It's probably slightly unfavorable, but yeah, if you set up fast, you definitely have a decent shot of winning. They still need a lot to win there. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. I've never played the match in my life, so I have nothing to add. All right.
Understandable.
Yeah, I mean, block lax matchups, not great. What do you think?
You lose. You cannot win. Okay, more specifically, our list that we played at San Antonio cannot win. Almost certainly cannot win. I do have a couple notes on this matchup, but
Okay.
so the standard version of Block Lax is the more popular one everyone's been playing, and then there's the Pidgeot version that managed to make top 8. I had the pleasure of playing against both versions in San Antonio regionals, and got absolutely slaughtered by both of them. But I will say the Pidgeot version is a lot harder to beat than the regular version, even if the difference is a 99-1 to a 100-0. But basically, against the regular version, you theoretically can win. I have thought out this elaborate strategy that will probably never happen. If you start Charmander or Pidgey, that's good, and then you go Charizard Pidgeot. That's it. Hit with Charizard. They are inevitably going to go into Mimikyu, and so what you have to do is you have to get Charmeleon and retreat into the Charmeleon, vacuum the Charm or a Cape if it has it, and Lost City. So then you Lost City their Mimikyu and KO it with Charmeleon. And then you can Super Rod the energy back and evolve into Charizard. So then you have Pidgeot with 2, Charizard with 2, Charizard with 2. And then you can actually win by just hitting with Charizard. The problem is the deck is not going to let you do that. So they're going to try and put out little guys on your bench and trap them. And we have no switch cards, and so we have a really hard time with that. So basically the idea is get pretty lucky, and you can actually quick search every turn for Ultra Ball and Level Ball and stuff like that. And then when you finally top deck a crappy basic Pokemon that you don't want to get hit with Erica, you can search out a bunch of other ones and then play Iono and hopefully buy yourself enough time to win because all your basics are on the bottom of your deck. That's the super Omega Copium. You're never going to win this matchup, but that's the line that you try to do. You can also boss KO Rotom with a Vitality Band with Charizard, which can slow down their setup a little bit, so that's cool. And that's also something that you can do to get around Mimikyu while you're still setting up. Pidgeot version, you actually just can't win because they have lots of ways to pressure you. They can actually attack with Pidgeot, they can attack with Luxray V, and they can even maul. I had a situation where he maul wild me and I couldn't even boss around it, which is what you try and boss around Snorlax. Yeah, basically as soon as you get something on your board that can't attack, the game's just over. And they have quite a bit of time to do that. So yeah, pretty bad. I don't think you can ever really win this matchup, but you might be able to if you get lucky. So yeah, definitely a 595 or worse probably.
Yeah, cool. Pretty insightful.
Yeah, just try to not play against him. That's it.
Try not to play against them. All right, Entei, Iron Valiant. Yeah, what do you think? Also, no.
Yeah, this is another slightly unfavorable on paper. If you get Charizard set up, you should be good. If you get 2 Charizard set up, you're definitely good. Actually, they might Devo you, so you got to watch out for that. Similar to the Urshifu, where you set up Pidgeot and Charizard with Candy, and then set up the other one with Charmeleon. And you don't need Manaphy in this matchup, obviously, but the Drachi is very, very good because it stops Yoga Loop on the bench. So you can also the Entei having to play ropes a lot at random times actually messes with them a little bit because if you have Jirachi, they can only Yoga Loop your active, so they have a really hard time planning out. And you have a bunch of 70 HP guys that you can just send up to, and they pretty much can never Yoga Loop you, which is pretty cool. And they're pretty much relying on the Devo play for the most part, especially if you get set up. So you go Pidgeot, Charizard, and Charmeleon to another Charizard, and you should be good. Of course, their deck is super aggressive in the early game, so they can pretty easily shut you out of Pidgeot, which is the biggest problem with the matchup. Is they can pretty easily shut you out of Pidgeot. Nothing you can do about that. They just get 3 Valiants on a Pidgey. You maybe could try and get a second Pidgey on turn 1. That might work. But if you are able to get Charizards out, that's really good in this matchup. I have found Radiant's already be good in this matchup, but obviously we don't play that anymore, so that's too bad. But yeah, I'd say Charizard has a lot of like slightly unfavorables on paper, which is really annoying. I typically don't play a deck like that, but the deck is just so good. It like doesn't matter. It's like kind of like Mew used to be. Like it has a lot of like on paper bad matches. The deck's just so good that it just doesn't matter. So that's like kind of the case with all these random matchups that are kind of tough, but you can still win because your deck's good. And then yeah, the only one you really don't want to see is Snorlax. So yeah, that's like pretty much it for Entei. There's not like really that much you can do about Entei. I'd say they have like more of like the agency of like kind of just what they draw depends on how the game goes.
And the thing you said earlier with you're just trying to shove 70 HP things. Are you trying to bench more? Are you just throwing 70 HP things on the board like Manaphy and stuff so it's good rope target, or is that not really something that matters?
If I have just an extra mana fee, then like sure. You usually don't really have the bench space for that because you want like a bunch of Manders, Pidgey, Jirachi, and then I really like to leave myself a space for Luminion, but I guess if something's just going to get KO'd anyway, then you could maybe throw a mana fee in there. Um, yeah.
Cool.
So, but yeah, just a bunch of 70s is like pretty good because it's kind of annoying for them to kill 70s. Yeah.
Cool. All right, and the last two matchups I have is Roaring Moon and Chien. They're not really being played that much anymore, but if you want to, you have anything very specific for either of these matchups, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, nothing like too specific. The Chien matchup's not very good. We don't play the Avery, so that would be a good tech for that matchup. Um, the best way I think you can win is like by denying Bibarel. There might be some situations where you go after backs, but they're like pretty much ready for that. And if they have Bibarel on the board, they can pretty easily replace backs. So I think if you can like maybe Lost City of Bibarel and then like counter catcher Iono like KO another one, that's gotta be your best chance of winning. I think. Um, and I actually lost. I played Chien at LAIC and I got handily destroyed by a Charizard Pidgeot. Though he did have Avery, but that's what he did is he just like Avery'd, which a little bit more easily forced me out of Bibarel and then like counter catch Iono. So I think that's like the best strategy, and because if they don't have Bibarel, they do kind of lose to Iono. So that's like your best line against Roaring Moon. The 30 damage, 60 HP Charmander is really good against them, but we don't play that. It doesn't really matter. You kind of just beat them anyway. The matchups overall pretty good. If they're playing the ninja version, you do need Manaphy to not get like turn one ninja. That's probably your most likely way to lose is like if you are forced to go first and then they like turn one ninja because it's kind of hard for you to like set up a bunch of basics on turn one if you're going first. So yeah, you definitely want to go second there if you can. And if they play waters, you gotta be a little bit worried about the ninja. But overall, it's pretty hard for Roaring Moon to like deal with Charizard because you know, you're not setting up a two prizer until you're KOing something or like applying pressure, and then they have to respond to that, and then you can KO them even with like a Mander or Charmeleon still. If you need to, you can vacuum. You play two vacuum for like any of their tools. Not an auto win by any means, still very winnable for Moon, but yeah, you don't do anything too special in that matchup. You just kind of like do your thing and you're favored. So yeah, I'd say Roaring Moon good, Chien Pao not so good, but not like an auto loss.
Cool. All right, well, that's all I have for the matchup guide. Thanks so much, Grant, for coming on and talking to me. Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Play Charizard.
Play Charizard. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.